The transport shuttle landed with a heavy thud on the metal floor of the hangar bay. Steam hissed from the engines as the doors slowly opened. Commander Velthus stood on the observation deck above, watching the new recruits step out one by one. His 4 yellow eyes moved across each face, judging them silently. Velthus was tall, even for his species. His gray skin was thick like armor, and his body was covered in old scars from battles he had won. He had commanded the Sovereign Dawn for 15 years. He had seen every kind of soldier walk through this hangar. He thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. The recruits walked in a line. There were Bralock soldiers, huge and strong with arms like tree trunks. There were Vethany scouts, small and quick with eyes that could see in complete darkness. And then, at the very end of the line, there was a human. Velthos let out a small laugh. Humans were new to the Galactic Coalition. They'd only joined 3 years ago when their planet was discovered. Most commanders did not want humans on their ships. They were small. They were soft. They lived short lives and broke easily. Velthos had heard stories about humans, but he had never believed them. To him, they were just another weak species trying to play soldier. The human was young, maybe 25 years old by human counting. His name, according to the file, was Kang Ta-Wu. He had black hair cut short and a calm face that showed no emotion. He was not tall. He was not muscular. He looked like the kind of soldier who would die on his first mission. But then Velthus saw what walked beside him at first. He thought his eyes were playing tricks. The creature that stepped out of the shuttle behind the human was something from nightmares. It was a Korath, a beast from the death world, Nexer 7. The creature stood on 6 powerful legs. Its body was covered in black scales that looked like polished stone. Armored plates ran down its spine, and its head was wide and flat with 2 rows of teeth that could bite through metal. Its eyes glowed with a faint red light. The entire hangar went silent. Every soldier, every officer, every worker stopped what they were doing and stared. Some stepped back in fear. Others reached for weapons they knew would be useless. Koraths were not pets. They were not companions. They were monsters. The Coalition had sent hundreds of soldiers to Nexer 7 to capture just one for study. None of them came back alive. The beasts were too fast, too strong, too hungry. They could not be trained. They could not be controlled. They killed everything that moved. Yet this one walked calmly beside the human, like a dog following its master. Velthus gripped the railing of the observation deck. His mind could not understand what he was seeing. The human showed no fear. He walked at a normal pace, his hand resting gently on the creature's shoulder. The Korath made no sound. It simply walked, its red eyes scanning the hangar but showing no aggression. "Is this a joke?" Velthos said out loud. His voice was sharp with anger and confusion. His second-in-command stood beside him. Her name was Nari, and she was also human. She had served on the Sovereign Dawn for 3 years and had earned her rank through skill and bravery. Velthos did not like humans, but he respected Nari. She had proven herself many times. Nari did not answer his question. She only watched the young human below with a strange look in her eyes. It was not surprise. It was something else. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. Velthos did not wait for an answer. He walked down the stairs to the hangar floor, his heavy boots making loud sounds with each step. The recruits saw him coming and stood straighter. Fear showed on most of their faces. Velthus was known for being cruel to those he considered weak. He stopped directly in front of Kang Ta-Wu. The human looked up at him. There was no fear in his eyes. No respect either. Just calm, like the surface of still water. The Korath turned its massive head toward Velthos. A low rumble came from its throat, so deep that Velthos could feel it in his chest. But the creature did not attack. It simply watched. "What is this?" Velthos demanded, pointing at the beast. You bring a Karath onto my ship? Do you know how many soldiers have died trying to capture one of these things? Taewu bowed his head slightly, a gesture of greeting common among humans. His name is Beak, he said. His voice was quiet but steady. He will cause no trouble. Velthos laughed. It was a harsh sound, like stones grinding together. Beak, you gave it a name? You think that thing is your pet? Other soldiers in the hangar began to laugh too. They looked at the human with mocking eyes. A small man with a monster he thought he could control. It was funny to them. Sad and funny that Taewu said nothing. He did not defend himself. He did not explain. He simply stood there, waiting for Velthos to finish. This made Velthos angrier. He wanted a reaction. He wanted the human to show fear or anger or anything. But Taewu gave him nothing. Listen to me carefully, human, Velthos said, leaning down until his face was close to Taewu's. I do not know how you tricked that beast into following you. I do not care. On this ship, you are nothing. You are the lowest of the low. And when that creature turns on you, and it will turn on you, I will not send anyone to save you. Do you understand? Taewu met his gaze without looking away. I understand, Commander. Velthos stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Give him the worst quarters, he ordered over his shoulder. And keep that thing away from the other soldiers. As Velthos left, Nari came down to the hangar floor. She approached Taewu slowly, stopping a few meters away. Beak watched her, but did not growl. You should have defended yourself, she said quietly. Taewu shook his head. Words mean nothing. He will see the truth when it matters. Nari looked at Beak. The Korath had lowered its head and was pressing its nose against Taewu's hand, like a cat asking to be touched. It was the strangest thing she had ever seen. How? She asked. It was the only word she could manage. Taewu smiled, just a little. I found him dying alone on a cold moon. He was small then, just a cub. His mother was dead. Everything wanted to kill him. He scratched behind one of Beak's armored plates. The beast made a sound almost like purring. I stayed with him. I kept him warm. I shared my food. It took 2 years before he trusted me completely. Nari stared at him. 2 years on a death world, alone with a Korath cub. Most soldiers would not survive 2 days. The commander will make your life very hard, she warned. Taewu nodded. I know, but I have faced harder things. He walked toward the quarters he had been assigned, Beak following close beside him. Nari watched them go, a feeling growing in her chest that she could not name. Something was about to change on this ship. She was sure of it. 3 days passed on the Sovereign Dawn. 3 days of whispers and stares and cruel jokes. The other soldiers avoided Taewu like he carried a disease. They feared Beak, of course, but they also did not want to be seen with the human that Commander Velthos hated. Being close to Taewu meant being close to trouble. Taewu did not mind. He ate alone in the corner of the mess hall. He trained alone in the cargo bay when others were sleeping. And every night, he slept on the cold floor of his small quarters, with Beak curled around him like a living wall of armor. On the 4th day, Velthos called all recruits to the mission. Briefing room. The room was large with metal walls and a glowing table in the center that showed maps and battle plans. Velthos stood at the head of the table, his 4 eyes moving across the faces of the new soldiers. When his gaze reached Taewu, he smiled. It was not a kind smile. We have received orders from Coalition Command, Velthos began. There is a moon called Krath 6 at the edge of this sector. Our sensors have detected enemy movement there. We need a reconnaissance team to scout the surface, gather information, and return. The recruits nodded. Reconnaissance missions were dangerous but normal. The mission requires a small team. 1 soldier. Velthos paused. I have decided that our newest recruit will have the honor. Everyone in the room turned to look at Te-Wu.Kreth. Was not just any moon. Every soldier in the coalition knew its name. The surface was covered in thick fog that was poison to most species. Strange plants grew there that could melt through armor. And worst of all, it was home to the Kreth Devourers, insect-like creatures the size of dogs that hunted in swarms of hundreds. They had destroyed entire squads in minutes. Sending one soldier to Kreth 6 was not a mission. It was a death sentence. The Bralok's recruit, a huge soldier named Goreth, spoke up. Commander, with respect, that moon has killed experienced teams. Sending one recruit alone is what? Velthos interrupted coldly. Are you questioning my orders? Goreth looked down. No, Commander. Velthos turned back to Te-Wu. Do you accept this mission, human? Or do you want to admit that you do not belong here? Every eye in the room watched Te-Wu. They expected him to refuse. They expected him to beg. Some even expected him to cry dot instead. Te-Wu simply nodded. I accept. Velthos blinked, surprised for just a moment. Then he laughed. Good. You leave in 1 hour. Try not to die too quickly. The shuttle dropped Te-Wu and Beak on the surface of Kreth 6 at dawn. The pilot did not even wish him luck. The moment they stepped off, the shuttle flew away as fast as it could. The fog was thick and green, moving slowly like a living thing. Te-Wu pulled a mask over his face to filter the poison. Beak did not need one. Koraths could survive almost anything. They moved forward together, their steps careful and quiet. Te-Wu held his rifle ready, his eyes watching every shadow. Beak walked beside him, so close that their bodies almost touched. The beast's head was low, its red eyes glowing brighter in the darkness. They moved as one. When Te-Wu stopped, Beak stopped. When Beak turned his head, Te-Wu looked in the same direction. They did not need words. They did not need signals. 2 years of surviving together had made them into something more than partners. They were like 2 parts of the same body. The first hour passed without trouble. Te-Wu collected data on his scanner, marking enemy positions and counting ships hidden under camouflage nets. The information was valuable. If he could return with it, the coalition would have everything they needed to plan an attack. Then the ground began to shake. Te-Wu froze. He knew that feeling. He had read the reports. The Kreth Devourers lived underground, sleeping in great nests until something woke them. And now something had. The first one burst from the dirt 10 meters ahead. It was ugly, with a long body covered in hard shell and 6 legs that ended in sharp claws. Its head was nothing but a mouthful of teeth that spun like a drill. Then another came. And another. And then dozens more, pouring out of the ground like water from a broken pipe. The swarm spread across the surface, their clicking sounds filling the air. A normal soldier would have run. Running would have meant death, but fear makes people do stupid things. Te-Wu did not run. He dropped to one knee and placed his hand on Beak's side. Together, he whispered in Korean. Beak's eyes exploded with light. The red glow became bright like fire, and the Korath opened its mouth and roared. The sound was so loud that the nearest devourers stopped moving for a second, confused by a predator they had never faced before. That second was all Beak needed. The Korath charged into the swarm like a black storm. Its claws cut through shells like paper. Its teeth crushed bodies and threw them aside. It moved faster than something its size should be able to move, spinning and striking and never stopping. Te-Wu stood behind and fired his rifle with perfect aim. Each shot hit a devourer that was trying to attack Beak from the side or behind. He did not miss once. He did not waste a single bullet. Where Beak was strength and fury, Te-Wu was calm and precise. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, the ground was covered in broken shells and green blood. Hundreds of devourers lay dead. Beak stood in the middle of the destruction, breathing hard but uninjured. Taewoo walked to his side and checked him for wounds. "Good boy," he said softly, pressing his forehead and Beak's snout. The Korath made a low, happy sound. They continued the mission. 3 hours after landing, Taewoo activated his communicator and called for extraction. The shuttle pilot who answered sounded shocked. "You are alive?" "I have full reconnaissance data," Taewoo replied. "Ready for pickup?" When the shuttle returned to the Sovereign Dawn, a crowd had gathered in the hangar. Word had spread that the human had survived Krath 6. No one believed it until they saw him walk off the shuttle, Beak beside him, both covered in green devourer blood, but very much alive. Velthos stood on the observation deck, watching. His face showed nothing, but his hands gripped the railing so hard that the metal bent under his fingers. Nari met Taewoo at the bottom of the ramp. "The data you collected," she said. "It is perfect. Command is already planning the strike." Taewoo nodded. He looked tired but not broken. "How did you do it?" Nari asked quietly. "The Devourers alone should have killed you." Taewoo looked at Beak. The Korath was licking green blood off its claws, looking almost bored. "I was never alone," he said simply. That night, the soldiers on the Sovereign Dawn began to tell stories. Stories about the human and his shadow. Stories about the man who walked with a monster and came back from the moon of death. Some still laughed at him. But now, when they laughed, there was fear hiding behind their eyes. And up on the observation deck, Commander Velthos stared at the stars and felt something he had not felt in many years: doubt. 2 weeks passed after the Krath 6 mission. The Sovereign Dawn continued its patrol through the outer sectors, and life on the ship returned to its normal rhythm. But something had changed. Taewoo was no longer invisible. Soldiers who had ignored him before now nodded when he passed. Some even tried to talk to him, asking questions about Beak or about the battle with the Devourers. Taewoo answered politely, but never said more than necessary. He was not trying to make friends. He was just trying to do his job. This new respect for the human made Velthos furious. The commander watched from his position above, seeing his crew slowly accept the man he had tried to destroy. It was an insult to everything Velthos believed. Humans were weak. They were emotional. They did not belong in the coalition military. And yet this one human was making him look like a fool. Velthos needed to fix this. He needed to prove once and for all that Taewoo was nothing special. On the 15th day, Velthos called a general assembly. Every soldier on the ship gathered in the main hangar, standing in neat rows before a raised platform where the commander stood. This kind of assembly was rare. It only happened for important announcements or serious matters. Taewoo stood in the back row with Beak beside him. Nari stood nearby, her face tight with worry. She had heard rumors about what Velthos was planning, and she did not like it. "Soldiers of the Sovereign Dawn," Velthos began, his voice echoing through the hangar. "Today, I must address a matter of military tradition, a matter that has been ignored for too long." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "Among us is a soldier who claims to have bonded with a Korath, a creature that has killed more coalition troops than any enemy fleet, a creature that cannot be tamed, trained, or controlled." Velthos pointed directly at Taewoo. "I speak of the human, Kang Taewoo, and his so-called companion." Every head in the hangar turned toward Taewoo. He felt their eyes on him but showed no reaction. "Our laws are clear," Velthos continued. "When a soldier claims dominion over a dangerous creature, any officer may challenge that claim. It is called the Dominion Trial, and today I invoke this right." A murmur spread through the crowd. The Dominion trial was an ancient law, rarely used in modern times. It forced a soldier to prove absolute control over their bonded creature. Failure meant losing the creature. In some cases, it meant death. Velthos smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The trial is simple, human. If that beast truly serves you, then command it. Command it to bow before me. Make it submit. The hanger went silent. Everyone knew what Velthos was asking. Koraths did not bow. They did not submit. They were creatures of pure instinct and violence. Asking a Korath to bow was like asking fire not to burn. Tewu stepped forward, walking through the crowd until he stood at the front, facing the platform. Beak followed close behind, the Korath's red eyes fixed on Velthos with cold attention. "Commander," Tewu said calmly, "I will not give that command." Velthos laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Then you admit you have no control? You admit that beast is just a wild animal walking free on my ship?" "No." Tewu's voice was still quiet, but somehow filled the entire hangar. "I will not give that command because Beak does not serve me." Confusion spread across the faces of the alien soldiers. They did not understand. Velthos leaned forward, ready to declare victory. "Then what is he to you?" Velthos demanded. "A pet? A weapon? What?" Tewu looked back at Beak. The Korath met his eyes, and something passed between them that no one else could see or understand. "Beak is my family." The word hit the crowd like a physical force. Family. It was such a simple word, but it carried a weight that many species in the galaxy did not fully understand. For them, bonds were about power, about control, about who dominated and who obeyed. But for humans, family was something different. Nari stepped forward, unable to stay silent any longer. "Commander, if I may explain." She did not wait for permission. Humans do not think of bonds the way other species do. We do not believe in dominion over those we love. We believe in something called pack. She looked at the confused faces around her and tried to find simpler words. In a pack, there is no master and no slave. There are only members who choose to stay together. They protect each other. They fight for each other. They die for each other. Not because they are forced to, but because they want to. Velthos snorted. Pretty words. But words do not change facts. If he cannot control the beast, he has no right to keep it. "Control is not the same as loyalty," Nari replied. "I could force a soldier to follow me by threatening his life. That would be control. But the moment my back is turned, that soldier would betray me." She pointed at Beak. "That creature could kill every person in this room in minutes. Nothing controls it. Nothing forces it to stay. And yet it stays. It fights beside Tewu. It protects him. It chooses him every single day. That is not control, Commander. That is something stronger." The crowd was silent, thinking about her words. Some of the soldiers looked at Tewu and Beak with new eyes. They saw how the Korath stood close to the human, how it watched him with eyes that held no violence, only patience. Velthos was losing, and he knew it. His face twisted with anger. "Enough philosophy," he spat. "The law is the law. Make the beast bow or lose your claim to it." Tewu did not look away from the commander. "And if I refuse, then I will have the beast removed from this ship by force, and you will face punishment for disobeying a direct order from your commanding officer." The threat hung in the air. Tewu could accept it. He could bow his own head and walk away. Beak would be taken to some research facility, probably killed and studied. And Tewu would spend the rest of his military career in a prison cell. Or he could do what Velthos wanted. He could try to command Beak to bow. But he knew what would happen. Beak would not understand. Beak would think something was wrong. And then Beak would do what Koraths did when they were confused and threatened. He would fight. People would die. Good soldiers who had done nothing wrong. And in the end, Beak would be killed too, shot down by security forces while trying to protect the human he loved. Tai Wu closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his decision was made. I will not command Beak to do anything, he said clearly. He is not my slave. He is not my weapon. He is my brother, and I will not betray him for your pride. The words echoed through the hangar. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Velthos opened his mouth to give the order that would end everything. And then the ship shook with the force of an explosion. Red lights filled the hangar. Alarms screamed from every speaker. A voice came over the communication system, filled with panic. All hands! All hands! Enemy fleet emerging from slipspace. Void Reavers! We are under attack. For one moment, Velthos and Tiwu stared at each other. The challenge, the trial, the conflict between them suddenly meant nothing, because death had come for everyone. The Sovereign Dawn screamed. That was the only way to describe the sound that filled the ship as the Void Reavers attacked. Metal twisted and tore. Explosions ripped through the outer hull. Emergency lights turned everything red, like the whole ship was bleeding. Void Reavers were not like other enemies. They were not soldiers fighting for territory or resources. They were something worse. Their ships were part machine and part living creature, fused together in ways that science could not explain. And the Reavers themselves were nightmares given form, tall and thin with bodies made of black metal and flesh. Their faces nothing but mouths filled with spinning teeth. They did not want to conquer. They wanted to consume. The first wave hit the Sovereign Dawn before anyone could react. Reaver boarding pods crashed through the hull in dozens of places, each one releasing groups of screaming monsters into the corridors. Soldiers who had been standing at attention in the hangar moments ago now grabbed weapons and ran toward the sounds of battle. Velthos shouted orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. All combat teams to defense positions. Seal the breaches. Protect the command deck. He ran toward the command deck himself, knowing that if the Reavers took control of the ship systems, everyone would die. His guards followed close behind, firing at Reavers that crawled along the walls and ceiling like insects. Tewu did not follow the crowd. He moved through the ship by a different path, Beak running beside him. The corridors were filled with smoke and fire and the bodies of fallen soldiers. Reavers attacked them twice. Both times, Beak tore through them like paper while Tewu covered him with precise rifle shots. They reached the lower levels, where the damage was worst. A Reaver pod had crashed directly into the engineering section, and the creatures were trying to break through to the main power core. If they succeeded, the ship would lose all power. No weapons, no shields, no life support. We stopped them here, Tewu said. Beak growled in agreement. They fought side by side in the narrow corridor, holding the line against wave after wave of Reavers. Tewu's rifle grew hot in his hands from constant firing. Beak's black scales were covered in the strange silver blood of the creatures he killed. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, backup arrived. A team of Bralock soldiers pushed through from behind, their heavy weapons clearing the remaining Reavers. The engineering section was saved, but then a message came through Tewu's communicator. It was Nari's voice, broken by static and fear. Tewu, the command deck has fallen. The commander is trapped. Reavers everywhere. We cannot reach him. Nobody can reach him. Tewu felt his heart freeze for just a moment. Velthos, the man who had hated him, mocked him, tried to destroy him. The man who had challenged him just minutes ago. He could leave him to die. No one would blame him. Most would understand, but that was not who Tewu was. I am coming, he said into the communicator. He ran. Beak ran beside him. They moved through corridors filled with death and destruction, past screaming soldiers and burning walls. The command deck was at the top of the ship, 3 levels up. Every path was blocked by reavers or collapsed ceiling or fires too hot to pass through. Wu found another way. He climbed through maintenance tunnels meant for repair robots, spaces barely big enough for his body. Beak followed somehow, the Korath squeezing through openings that should have been too small. Driven by the same determination that drove his human companion, they reached the command deck from above, dropping through a ventilation shaft into the middle of a nightmare. The command deck was destroyed. Consoles sparked and burned. Bodies lay everywhere. And in the center of the room, trapped under a fallen support beam, was Commander Velthos. His legs were crushed. Silver blood poured from a wound in his side where a reaver had slashed him before being killed by his guards. Those guards were dead now, torn apart by the 20 reavers that surrounded their commander like wolves around wounded prey. Velthos looked up and saw Taiwu. Something crossed his face that might have been surprise or might have been shame. Human, he managed to say through the pain. Run, you cannot save me. There are too many. Wu looked at the reavers. 20 of them. All focused on Velthos, but turning now to face this new threat. Their mouths opened, releasing that horrible sound that was part scream and part laugh. 20 reavers. One human. One Kor Reth. Taiwu knelt beside Beak. He looked into those red eyes that he had known for so long. Eyes that had watched him through sickness and cold and battles without number. He did not speak a command. He did not give an order. He asked a question. Will you fight with me, brother? One more time? Beak stared at him for a long moment. The reavers crept closer, their metal claws clicking on the floor. Then the Korath did something that no Korath had ever done in the history of the galaxy. Beak lowered his massive head until his armored skull touched the floor. He pressed his snout against the metal and held still. A bow, not of submission, not of slavery. A bow of respect. A bow of partnership. A bow that said, in a language older than words, I trust you. I choose you. I will follow you into death itself. Taiwu felt tears burn in his eyes, but he did not let them fall. He placed his hand on Beak's head, feeling the warmth beneath those cold scales. Together then, until the end. He climbed onto Beak's back. The Korath rose, lifting Taiwu high above the floor. For the first time, human and beast were truly one creature. Beak roared, and the sound shook the walls of the command deck. The reavers hesitated, confused by something their simple minds could not process. Then Taiwu and Beak charged. The battle was brutal and beautiful. Beak moved like liquid death, spinning and striking and biting. Taiwu fired from his back, taking down reavers that tried to attack from the sides. When his rifle ran empty, he drew his knife and fought hand to claw, stabbing anything that came close. They killed 5 reavers in the first 10 seconds. Then 10, then 15. The remaining 5 tried to run. Beak did not let them. He hunted them down one by one, his fury endless, his power beyond anything the creatures had ever faced. When the last reaver fell, silence filled the command deck. Taiwu slid off Beak's back, his body exhausted and covered in blood, some of it his own. He walked to where Velthos lay trapped and began to lift the support beam. It was too heavy. He could not move it alone. Beak appeared beside him. The Korath lowered his head and pushed, his 6 powerful legs digging into the floor. Together, human and beast lifted the beam and threw it aside. Velthos was free. Taiwu helped the commander sit up. Medical teams would arrive soon. The ship was still fighting, but the battle was turning. Nari had rallied the surviving soldiers. The reavers were being pushed back. Velthos looked at Taiwu with his 4 eyes. Something had changed in them. The pride was gone. The cruelty was gone. What remained was something raw and honest. "Why?" he asked, his voice weak. "Why did you save me? After everything I did to you?" Taewoo looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Beak, who stood beside him, bloody and tired but alive. "Because that is what Pact does," he said simply. "We do not leave family behind. Even family that does not know they are family yet." Velthos stared at him, and for the first time in his long life, the commander had no words. The battle for the Sovereign Dawn lasted 6 more hours. 6 hours of fire and blood and desperate fighting through corridors that had become death traps. 6 hours of soldiers giving their lives to protect their ship and their crewmates. 6 hours of hell that would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. But in the end, they won. Nar, I was the one who ended it. When the Reaver command ship moved into position to deliver a final blow, she was already at a damaged weapons console on Deck 7. The main firing systems were offline, but she found a way to launch one torpedo manually. Just one. It was enough. The Reaver command ship exploded in a ball of white fire. Without their leader, the remaining Reaver forces fell into confusion. Some fled into slipspace. Others crashed into each other in their panic. The survivors on the Sovereign Dawn watched from broken windows as their enemy destroyed itself. When it was finally over, nobody cheered. They were too tired, too broken, too full of grief for friends who would never laugh again. The Sovereign Dawn limped through space toward the nearest Coalition station, its engines damaged, its hull torn open in 100 places. Emergency teams worked without rest to keep the ship alive. Medical teams worked even harder to keep the crew alive. 3 days after the battle, Commander Velthos was released from the medical bay. His legs had been saved, though he would walk with a limp for the rest of his life. His wounds were healing, but something else had changed in him, something deeper than any physical injury. He called another assembly in the hangar. The hangar was different now. Half of it was sealed off because of hull damage. The floor was stained with marks that cleaning crews could not remove. Only 200 soldiers stood in the space, where 500 had gathered before. Taewoo stood in the front row this time. No one had asked him to move there. No one had needed to. The soldiers had simply made space for him, a silent recognition of what he had done. Beak stood beside him, as always. The Korath had scars now, silver lines across his black scales where Reaver claws had cut deep. He wore them without shame. They were marks of battle, proof of courage. Velthos walked onto the platform slowly, his injured leg making each step difficult. He looked out at his crew, these soldiers who had fought and bled and died under his command. His face showed something that few of them had ever seen: humility. 3 days ago, Velthos began, his voice quieter than usual. I stood in this same place and invoked an ancient law. I demanded that a soldier prove his dominion over a creature I considered nothing but a monster. I did this not because I cared about tradition or law. I did this because I was afraid. The words hung in the air. A commander admitting fear was almost unheard of. I was afraid of what I did not understand. Humans were new to our galaxy. Their ways were strange to me. They formed bonds that made no sense under our rules. They loved creatures that should have killed them. They showed kindness to those who showed them cruelty. Velthos paused. I thought this made them weak. I thought their softness would destroy them. He looked directly at Taewoo. I was wrong. The hangar was completely silent. Every soldier watched, barely breathing. When the Reavers came, I was trapped and dying. My guards were dead. My ship was falling. I had accepted that my life was over. Velthos's voice grew thick with emotion he could not hide. And then he came. The human I had mocked. The human I had tried to break. He came through fire and death to save me. A man who deserved no saving. Velthos stepped down from the platform. His limp made the movement slow, but no one rushed him. He walked until he stood directly in front of Tae-woo, close enough to touch. I called you weak because you would not command your companion to bow. I said you had no control, no power, no right to call yourself a soldier. Velthos shook his head slowly. But I understand now. I finally understand. He looked at Beak. The Korath watched him with red eyes that held no anger, only patience. That creature bowed to you, Velthos said. In the command deck, surrounded by enemies, facing certain death, he lowered his head to you. Not because you forced him. Not because you dominated him. He bowed because he chose to. Because you earned his respect through years of love and sacrifice and partnership. Velthos turned back to Tae-woo. A creature that cannot be tamed chose to follow you. A monster that kills everything it meets decided that you were worth dying for. That is not weakness, human. That is the most terrifying strength I have ever seen. Then Commander Velthos, veteran of 100 campaigns, leader of the Sovereign Dawn, proud warrior of the Coalition, did something that shocked every person in the hangar. He knelt. His injured leg screamed in pain, but he ignored it. He lowered himself until one knee touched the floor, his head bowed before Kang Tae-woo. Forgive me, he said. I was the fool. For a long moment, Tae-woo did not move. He looked down at this alien who had made his life so difficult, who had tried so hard to prove that humans did not belong. He could have said many things. He could have been cruel. He could have reminded Velthos of every insult, every mockery, every attempt to destroy him. Instead, he reached down and offered his hand. There is nothing to forgive, Tae-woo said quietly. You did what you thought was right. You protected your crew from what you believed was a threat. That is what commanders do. Velthos looked up at the offered hand. Then he took it, and Tae-woo helped him rise. Perhaps, Velthos said slowly, I have more to learn from humans than I thought. Tae-woo smiled, just slightly. Perhaps we all have things to learn from each other. Behind them, Nari watched with tears in her eyes. The soldiers around her were silent, but she could feel something changing in them. The way they looked at Tae-woo, the way they looked at each other. Something had broken, and something new was growing in its place. The assembly ended without ceremony. Soldiers returned to their duties, their repairs, their grief. But they walked differently now. They spoke differently. The ship that had nearly died was becoming something stronger. That night, Tae-woo sat alone in the observation deck, watching the stars pass by outside the damaged windows. Beak lay beside him, his massive head resting on Tae-woo's lap. The human scratched behind his companion's armored plates, the same way he had done for years. We did good today, Tae-woo said softly. Beak made a low sound, something between a growl and a purr. Footsteps approached from behind. Nari sat down on Tae-woo's other side, her shoulder almost touching his. The crew is talking about you, she said. They say the human and his shadow saved the ship. They say you are a hero. Tae-woo shook his head. Beak saved the ship. I just helped. Nari laughed quietly. That is exactly what a hero would say. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the universe drift past. Finally, Nari spoke again. What happens now? Tae-woo thought about the question. He thought about all the battles still to come, all the challenges still to face. He thought about the aliens who still feared humans, still doubted them, still believed they were too soft for this galaxy. Now, he said, we show them who we really are. Not with words, not with arguments, just by being ourselves. By loving the things we love and protecting the things we protect and never giving up, no matter how hard it gets. He looked down at Beak, at this creature who had chosen him out of all the beings in the universe. That is what humans do. We make family out of strangers. We find hope in darkness. We keep going when everyone else has stopped. Beak opened one eye and looked up at him. The Korath did not understand the words, but he understood the feeling behind them. He pressed closer to his human, offering warmth and comfort and the simple promise of being there, always there. Nari smiled and leaned, her head against Daewoo's shoulder. Outside, the stars burned with cold fire, billions of lights in an endless darkness. The Sovereign Dawn flew on, wounded but alive, carrying its crew toward whatever came next. And in that moment, in that small pocket of peace among the ruins of battle, the universe did not seem so frightening anymore, because they were not alone. They were pack, they were family, and family could face anything.